She is a familiar face on Fox News, a staunch liberal with a background in Democratic politics. So it came as something of a surprise when Kirsten Powers wrote a candid and heartfelt piece for Christianity Today about how she found Jesus and came to embrace the faith. I sat down with her earlier here in Studio One. Kirsten Powers, welcome.
Good to be here.
This is a highly personal piece, almost a coming out. Why, several years later, did you decide to write it?
Well, they asked me to write it, so it wasn't something that Well, they came to me and they asked me if I would write about it, and I felt like, you know, this is a big part of my life. It's been a big part of my life for the last 7 years, and I couldn't think of any good reason to not write about it, and I just thought, yeah, now's the time to come out of the closet.
You were hanging around with your liberal friends, many of whom were atheists, and you began dating a man, as you describe in this article, who was into Jesus. And you write, I had found this man's church attendance an oddity to overlook, not a point in his favor. On the one hand, I was creeped out.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I lived in a world that was extremely secular. I didn't know anybody who went to church, and so to me it seemed like an odd thing to do, frankly. And when I reference being creeped out is when he basically one day said to me, you know, do you believe that Jesus is your savior? And I just thought, who says stuff like that? You know, I just never came in contact with anybody who ever talked about things like this. And so it was just very, very strange to me, living in Manhattan, working in Democratic politics. I mean, my world was just extremely, extremely left-wing, secular world.
And then 7 years ago, you had a moment.
Yeah. Yeah, well, as I recount in the piece, I had an experience. But the thing is, I just want to be clear, it wasn't a one moment kind of thing. It was something that over a year probably of going to church and studying the Bible and a lot of different things. And then I had this experience where I had a dream, and that sort of upended my world a little bit, and that I at first just thought was just a dream, you know, and because I didn't really believe in things like that. And maybe it was just a dream, I don't know, but it put me on a path of then sort of seeking out to learn more about it. I ended up in a Bible study, and that the rest is sort of history.
And even then, you write, the horror of the prospect of being a devout Christian crept in almost immediately. I spent the next few months doing my best to wrestle away from God.
Yeah.
Why?
It was a real culture shock for me, and still sometimes is, honestly. It was a world that was completely new to me. It was a world where most of the people I came in contact with were conservative. You know, if I had $1 for every time somebody said, I don't understand, how could you be a Democrat and be a Christian, I'd be a millionaire.
Why
seriously.
Is that a contradiction in terms?
And I don't think that it is.
Many Christians who are Democrats, some of whom are liberals? Yes,
I think so, and I think what they meant by that is an Orthodox Christian. So if I had been somebody who was sort of, well, yes, I believe in God, and you know, wasn't too serious about it, they would believe. But the fact that I was this now Orthodox Christian, so I felt a little bit like a fish out of water. I didn't feel very comfortable there, and it was many years until I started meeting other people who were like me, who were very progressive-minded politically, but also very conservative theologically.
On this question of the politics, again, you write, you said that you mostly heard about Christians saying things about gays and feminists. Is that because the media concentrate on those kinds of, some would say, inflammatory comments?
Yes and no. I think that, yes, the media is not the most Christian-friendly place in the world for the most part, but at the same time, a lot of these Christians bring it on themselves. They are saying these things, after all. You do have people, you know, coming out and saying, oh, 9/11 happened, or Hurricane Katrina happened because of lesbians. So they are bringing it on themselves. Those people, of course, don't necessarily represent the bulk of Christians, at least as I know them. But there are people out there that think that way. And so I think when Christians say, oh, we're being unfairly persecuted, it's like, well, then stop saying things like that.
Were you worried, as you came to grips with this in your heart, and then more publicly, that your friends, especially your lefty friends, might view you differently?
Yeah, well, I mean, I knew that they would, and they did. So I think that a lot of the people that I used to be very close to, we're still friends, but we don't have the same kind of relationship that we had.
So this changed the friendships you had,
definitely.
Maybe strained them, maybe made them more remote.
Some were strained.
Because they couldn't accept that you had become more religious and a devout Christian?
Well, I just think my whole life had centered on Democratic politics. I was very much in that bubble. My friend, you know, I worked in the Clinton administration, so I had all these friends from there, and then in Democratic politics in New York, and so that's what we kind of bonded over. That was our religion to a certain extent.
That was your religion.
Yeah, and so now suddenly I had different interests and was sort of moving in this other direction. So it's not that there were any falling outs or that they were mean to me or anything like that. It was just we started to be interested in different things.
And as you went public with your religious beliefs, what was the reaction of your family?
they were not very happy about it, I'd say. I come from a very intellectual family, very liberal family that's, my parents were professors, and they just thought it was extremely odd and didn't really like it very much. And I remember I said to my mother, I'm going to a Bible study, and she said, okay. And I said, and then she said, well, that's good. That's a nice education. It's a good, for literature and things like that. And I said, no, I believe it. And she sort of said, okay.
Very briefly, the reactions to your piece and whether it surprised you.
Very positive. Yeah, I was surprised, and I got so many emails, and I even heard from some of my friends who are atheists who really were interested in it and appreciated it and were inspired by it. So yeah, I was really welcome and nice response.
Kirsten Powers. Still to come, our news desk in New York standing by to give you the latest on that deadly train derailment in the Bronx. In the meantime, don't forget to check out our show's Facebook page. We're constantly posting content and having conversations there. Speaking of social media, up next, why the buying and selling of fake Twitter followers has become a very big business. And wait till you see how one newspaper is combining journalism and marijuana.
This is George. The day building a playset begins with a surprise twinge of back pain and a choice.
Take up to 4 Advil in a day, or 2 Aleve for all-day relief.
That's handy.